Let's talk about the access modifier named private. So what we'll do in order to explain what private does is change some of the methods that we've already defined in the previous video as public to private. So let's say we change the access modifier for the subtract method to be private, and also we change the access modifier for our variable to be private. Great. So if you remember previously, whenever we created an instance of the MathUtils class in the main class or a different separate class, that instance was able to access all of these variables and methods. It was able to access the variable named any variable. It was able to access add, subtract, multiply, divide, and factorial. It was able to access all of them. But right now we have two things that we've defined as private. The subtract method is private now, and the variable that we have right now is also private. So let's see if we create an instance of the MathUtils class somewhere else, let's say in the main method or in another class. Let's see whether or not those instances can access all of these methods and variables. So we're in the main class. We have our MU object, which is an instance of the MathUtils class. Great. Now it can access factorial because factorial, as you remember, is public. However, let's see if we can access subtract. Previously, it could access subtract, but right now, let's see whether or not MU can access subtract. So when we press dot, we see the different methods and variables that are available to us that we can access. But you see any variable, that variable that we had as an attribute of the MathUtils class, and the subtract method, both of them are missing right now because we defined them as private. In the same way, if we go to the other class that we created, ASD, there also it is able to still access factorial because factorial is public. However, let's see if new MU, this other instance of the MathUtils class, can access subtract or the attribute named any variable. You see, the attribute named any variable and the method named subtract, both of them are missing from here. So right now, all the different instances of MathUtils cannot access the subtract method and the any variable attribute because we defined it as private. So what does private really do? What private does is restrict the access of the variable or the method that we define as private, and it restricts it to the class itself. So when we define any variable as private, the only place where you can use any variable is in this class. In the same way, when you define subtract method as private, the only place where you can use the subtract method is within this class. And within this class means within these two brackets. Here's where this class starts, and here is where this class ends. And any private variable or private method will only be available within the class. That's what private does. So private restricts the access of the variable or the method within the class where it is defined. So you see, we can use any variable within any of these methods. We can say any variable. You see, any variable is present. It's accessible inside this class. And you will be able to use this in any of these methods. In the same way, subtract is also available to be used within this class. So if we type in S, it actually shows subtract as something that we can access, right? So we can directly access the subtract method here. We can directly access the any variable attribute here in any of these methods. But outside of this class, these two things, the subtract method and any variable attribute, will not be accessible. No one would even know that they exist. So if someone does not see the MathUtils code from the outside of this class, let's say from here or from here, they wouldn't even know that something called subtract exists or something called any variable exists because they won't be able to even see it here, right? So that's what private does. It restricts the access to variables and methods to only within the class where they are defined. Why do we need to restrict these accesses? We'll learn about that when we learn encapsulation. But for now, just understand that we're looking at different access levels and how we can control those access levels.